Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Brachos, Daf Chav Gimel. We're on Chav Beis Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. Tanu Rabban, we learned in the Brisa. Haya'aymed b'tfila, if one was in the middle of praying, middle of davening, umayim shoisis in al birkav, and he starts experiencing meraglayim, he starts urinating. The water is flowing on his knees. Paisik, he must pause, he must stop his davening. Until the meraglayim stop flowing. And then he resumes his prayer. Tais explains, although we just said before in the Mishnah that one may not daven in close proximity to meraglayim, to urine, we're speaking about a case where the meraglayim were already absorbed in the ground, or in his clothing, and therefore he may resume his tefillah. Says the Gemara, Laheichan chayzer. Where does he resume? Where does he go back to? There's a machlokes. Rav Chizda v'Rav Amnuna. Chad Omar chayzer l'roish. One shita holds that he must go back to the beginning of his Shemona Esrei. V'chad Omar, and one maintains l'makom shepasak. He merely goes back to the point where he left off. Says the Gemara, Leima b'hakam iflagi. Perhaps this is the basis of their machlokes, of their dispute. Mar savar imsha k'dei ligmar skula chayzer l'roish. One shita holds that, you know why he needs to go back to the beginning of Shemona Esrei? Because he was shahak de ligmar skula. He paused long enough that in that time he could have davened the whole Shemona Esrei. It was enough time that in theory he could have completed the entire Shemona Esrei from beginning to end. Therefore, this is such a great hefsek, such a significant pause, which requires him to go back to the beginning of Shemona Esrei. Whatever he already davened becomes nullified, since he paused such a great pause. Umar Savar, the other shita holds, l'machin shepasak. The other shita holds that even though he paused such a lengthy hefsek, such a long hefsek, that even in that time he could have davened the whole entire Shemona Esrei. Nevertheless, it doesn't concern us, and he can go back and pick up where he left off. Amar Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi, according to this explanation, that the machlokes is pertaining to a case where he paused long enough that he could have davened the entire tefillah within that time that he paused. If that's the machlokes, the Gemara should have expressed that, should explain that we're speaking about a case where he paused that long, and that is the basis of the machlokes, whether that requires one going back to the beginning or one could pick up where he left off. If that is the situation that we're speaking about, why didn't the Gemara express that? Perhaps it would seem from here that we're speaking about a case where he didn't pause that long. He only paused a short amount. So what is the machlokes? Ella, but rather the machlokes, the dispute, is regarding a different svara, is regarding a different rationale. Ella the kuliyama, everybody would hold imsha k'dei ligmar skula chayzer l'rosh. Certainly, if one paused such a great length of time that he could have davened the entire tefillah in that time that he paused, certainly he would be required to go back. Whatever he davened becomes nullified, and he needs to go and start from the beginning. We're speaking about we're speaking about that he didn't pause that long. So what then is the basis of this machlokes between Rav Chizda and Rav Amnuna, whether he's required to go back to the beginning of Shemona Esrei, or he could simply resume from where he left off? The Mar Savar Gavra Dechuyahu. One shita holds, the man Gavra Dechuyahu, he's ineligible, he is dachi, he's pushed away, meaning since he had experienced meraglayim during his tefillah, at that point he becomes dachi, he's ineligible to daven. Therefore, that interrupts the tefillah, that invalidates what he had already davened, and he must return to the beginning. Ve'ein roi, he's dachi and he's not fit. Ve'ein tefillah say tefillah, and his tefillah is invalid. Umar Savar, the other shita holds, Gavra Chaziu, he is eligible. We don't consider him to be ineligible. He's not dachi, he's still eligible. Utfilah say tefillah, and his tefillah is valid, although he needed to take this hefsek, this pause, on account of him experiencing the Meir Aglayim. Nevertheless, he can pick up from where he left off. Continues the Gemara, Tanu Rabban, we learned on a Brisa. Hanitzruch lenkavav, one who has an urge to relieve himself, al yispal, he may not daven. V'mispal, but if he went ahead and davened, tefillah te'eva, his tefillah is a domination. He shouldn't have davened in this type of situation. Omar Zvid v'Timar Yehuda, Leishanu, this is only said that his tefillah is a te'eva is only in a specific case, ela she'ena yachol lishes ba'atzmai. If he can't contain his urge, he has an urge to relieve himself and it's uncontainable. But if he could contain himself, he could restrain himself. Tefillah said tefillah. His tefillah is valid, although it's not optimal. He should have relieved himself beforehand. He should have prepared himself properly for tefillah. But nevertheless, if he went ahead and daven in this state, his tefillah is valid. Says more of at kama. For how long? Meaning, how long can he restrain himself in order for his tefillah to be valid? If it's only for a short time, is that also valid? Or do we require that he's capable of holding himself back for a very long time, so that his tefillah should be considered to be a valid tefillah? If he could contain himself, restrain himself until the amount that it takes to walk a parsa, which is 4 mil, which the Mishnah Berurah teaches us is 72 minutes. So if one has the ability to restrain himself that long, and he went ahead and davened in that state, his tefillah is valid. Ika de masna masnisa. Some had a different version of this halacha, that instead of Rav Zvid and Rav Yehuda teaching us the halacha of the sheer that a person could restrain himself, this was actually stated in the Brisa itself. When do we say that the tefillah is a domination of te'eva? Doesn't count, it's invalid when one needs to relieve himself. That is only kishein yachol lamed al atzmai. If a person is incapable of restraining himself, yes, that's a strong urge to relieve himself, that's when the tefillah is te'eva. But if the person can still restrain himself, in that case, his tefillah is kosher, is valid. Ve'ad kama. But for how long is he required to restrain himself? Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Zvid ad Parsa. So on the Brisa came along Rav Zvid or Rav Yehuda, and they explained that the amount one is required to be able to restrain himself in order for his tefillah to be valid is a shear of Parsa. If he's able to hold himself up for that long, then if he davens in that state is a good tefillah. But if he can't resist for the sheer parsa, then his urge is too strong, and therefore if he davens that state, the tefillah is a to'eva. Continues the Gemara. Omar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani Omar Rav Yonasan. Hanitzruch kavav, if someone has an urge, harizil yispal, he should not begin to daven. Now the Rishonim point out that even though we have said earlier that if one does daven in this state, in a state of yochel lahamid atzmat parsa, when a person knows that he's able to wait for 72 minutes, if a person davens in this state, his tefillah is valid, but nevertheless it is not l'chatchila. A person preferably should prepare himself properly and relieve himself prior to davening. So that's what the Gemara continues and says, Hanitzruch l'nekav harizeh lo yispalo, mishum shenemar hika in l'kras alakecha Yisrael. You should prepare yourself before you approach Hashem and daven to Him. V'amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani Omar Rav Yonasan. Mai dichsiv. What is the meaning of the following pasuk? Shmoi ragelcha. Guard your feet, your legs. Kasher telech al beis Elokim. When you walk, when you go to Hashem's house. Shmoi atzmcha shloi techta. What it means to say is guard yourself from sinning, from doing an avera. V'im techta havi karban lefanai. Because if you sin, you will be required to bring a karban. So the pasuk says, Shmoi ragelcha. Watch yourself. Watch your feet. You don't have to be mechayiv, obligate your feet to come bring me a karban. Guard yourself from sinning so that you are not required to walk, to come to Hashem's house to bring a karban. Continues the pasuk of karav l'shmaya. The conclusion of the pasuk is of a karav l'shmaya mitei saksilim zavach keinam yoidim las Yisra. That is the conclusion of this pasuk in Koheles. So the Gemara expounds further. What does it mean of a karav l'shmaya? Amar Rava. Have a karav l'shmaya divrei chachamim. You should listen out. You should hear. You should emulate the conduct of the wise people. That shim chaytim mivim karban v'osim tshuva. When a chacham and a wise person sins, it's inevitable. People sin. Nevertheless, they bring a karban and they do tshuva. They repent on their avera. Do that. You should choose this mode of behavior. Emulate their practice of bringing a karban and doing tshuva when you need to. But don't do miteis haksilim zavach. Don't follow the foolish people who bring a karban. Alti keksilim shechaytim mivim karban. Don't follow their example. The foolish people who bring their karban, ve'ein oisim tshuva. They bring a karban, but they don't do tshuva with their karban. Ki einam yodim la'asis ra, because they don't know how to do bad, to do wicked. Says, well, what do you mean? If a ksil is one who doesn't perform anything wicked, yachi tzadikim ninu. So what's wrong with them? They're righteous people if they don't do anything wrong. Ella, but rather, let's interpret it a little differently. Alti k'ksilim, don't emulate the manner of the foolish people, shechaitim. They sin, umivim carbon, then they go ahead and they bring a carbon. They bring a carbon, but they don't take it to heart. They don't realize that this carbon is really meant to be combined with their own personal tshuva. A carbon is not enough. A person who sins can't just write a check. He can't just give a donation. A silly, foolish person thinks that he's doing a favor. He's donating a carbon to Hashem. He doesn't realize that it involves personal sacrifice. He needs to repent. He needs to do tshuva together with his carbon in order to receive an atonement. So go follow the ways of the Chachamim, who when they sin, they bring a carbon and they combine it with personal tshuva, with personal introspect, with personal repentance. They're deep tshuva. They change their ways, rather than following the manner of the ksil, the foolish people who bring their carbon but don't do tshuva with their carbon. They don't differentiate between good and bad. And they go and bring a carbon to me. What's the point? So this is the lesson taught us in this pasuk. If one follows the ways of the wise, then when he sins, he brings a carbon, but he combines it with his own personal effort of tshuva, of mending your ways, of remaking oneself, together with his bringing carbon. Rav Ashi v'Temer Rav Chanina Rav Papa Amar, you have a different interpretation to this pasuk. Shmar nekavecha, you should guard your openings. B'shar shatam oimed b'fil lefanai, at the time when you stand and daven before me. Rashi explains, a person should take guard not to pass air. This is referring to the nekavim, which is located between the legs. It is something not respectable to Hashem when davening. Continues the Gemara. Tana Rabbanan. Hanichnas lebeis hakisei. One who enters a beis hakisei. Choylitz tfilah barachak dalad amas v'nichnas. Rashi explains, speaking about a beis hakisei kavua, an established beis hakisei, an established latrin. Rashi explains, in the old times they had no bathrooms like we had today, where the waste would go into a hole in the ground, but rather it was al pnei hasada, it was out in the field where the waste would just remain there where it was. So if one enters this type of place, a beis hakisei kavua, an established beis hakisei which contains human waste, he must remove his tefillin at a distance of 4 ames before he enters. Omar Rav Achbar Rav Huna Rav Sheshes Leishonal beis hakisei kavua. We're speaking about an established beis hakisei. Our beis hakisei arai choylets v'nifna la'alter. If it's merely a temporary beis hakisei, if it's a latrin which was not used, which does not contain tzoya, human waste, then a person may enter with his tefillin and remove his tefillin right there and then be nifna. Now, whenever we have the term nifna and this Gemara, it will be referring to relieving oneself of gdolim, of solid waste. Whenever we have the term yashtin, it's referring to ktanim, urinating. So a person may enter the beis hakisei arai, the temporary beis hakisei, meaning a beis hakisei that was not established yet, it was not used for gdolim. He may remove his tefillin right then and there, and then be nifna and relieve himself. On his way out, he must distance himself. He must distance himself a share of 4 amis, and then only then put back on his tefillin. This is speaking about the minhag, the custom that they had in those days to wear tefillin all the time. So, although he was allowed to wear his tefillin going into the latrin, but nevertheless on the way out, once he already was nifna there, says the Gemara, since he already established it, since he relieved himself, it became a beis hakisei kavua. It contains soya, and therefore it is already a place which contains impurity, and he must distance himself 4 ames before he puts back on his tefillin. Continues the Gemara, we have the following question. Can a person enter beis hakisei kavua in order to be mashtin mayim, to be mashtin, to experience meraglayim, to urinate? Now, the Rabbi Yan explains that we're not speaking about a beis hakisei kavua. He has a different version of the Gemara. He says beis hakisei tzanua, because we already learned before that one may not enter a beis hakisei kavua in any case with tefillin. He learns that the Gemara is speaking about a Beis HaKisei that was intended in the future to become an established Beis HaKisei, but has not yet been established as such. So his Gersa in the Gemara is Beis HaKisei Tsanua. Eventually it's going to be a Beis HaKisei Kavua. So the question is whether a person may enter this area with his tefillin, when his intention is only for Meir Aglayim, for Ktanim. Ravina Shari, he permitted. Rav Ada Bar Masna Asar, he prohibited it. Why? Says the Gemara, Asar Shailu Rava. They went to Esra Rava. Amalu Asar, he may not do so. Why? Chayshinan Shamayitna Behen. Although he intends only to do Meir Aglayim there, but since it's going to be a Beis HaKisei Kavua, it's already on the plans, so we were afraid that perhaps the person will come to relieve himself with doilim, and that is not allowed while wearing tefillin. Tefillin may not be worn when one is nifne, although it may be worn when one is merely mashtin. In this case, since it is considered to be somewhat of a Beis HaKisei Kavua where the custom is to be nifne there, so we're concerned that even if he enters merely lahashtin, that will lead him to be nifne, and that is not allowed with the tefillin. Therefore, he must remove his tefillin prior to entry into this area. Some say there was a different concern. We're concerned that he might pass air, and that is not allowed with his tefillin. Tan Yidach, we learned another brayso. Hanichnas Beis HaKisei Kavua. If one is entering a Beis HaKisei Kavua, so we have three opinions with regard to removal and holding of the tefillin in that situation. What is he meant to do with his tefillin? So the first shita is Beis Shammai. One is meant to remove his tefillin 4 amas prior to entering the Beis HaKisei Kavua. Umanichan, and he places them b'chaloin hasamach l'shusarabim. He places them in a window which is facing the public domain. V'nichnas, and then he enters behind the wall into the Beis HaKisei. Ukshu yaisei, when he leaves the Beis HaKisei, marchik dal damas umanichan, then he distances himself 4 amas and only then puts it on. This is something which everybody agrees with, as we mentioned earlier, since he must distance himself, he must be marching himself from the Beis HaKisei after he was nifna there, since it contains gedolim, it contains soya. Only then, when he's already marchik dal damas, he may put his tefillin back on. This is the view of Beis Shammai, that he may not bring his tefillin with him into the Beis HaKisei, but must deposit them in the chaloin hasamach l'shusarabim. He holds it in his hands, covers it in his hands, and brings it into the Beis HaKisei. We will see soon the reason for the Shitas Beis Hillel. We have a third Shita, Akiva Omer, he wraps it in his robe, in his clothing, in his garment, and brings them into the Beis HaKisei in that manner, in that fashion. Says the Gemara, big you are suggesting that one is meant to wrap it in his clothing. Perhaps he might forget, he might neglect the fact that he's holding it in his beged and loosen his grip, and they might fall out. So perhaps that's a concern that we should take into account, and we should not require him to wrap it in his beged, because it could just easily slip out. But we should say as follows: you shouldn't just wrap it in his clothing, because if he simply wraps it in his clothing, it might get loose, he might not pay attention to it, and it might just slip out. But rather, he should wrap it in his clothing and hold it in that manner. He should hold it, cover it in his clothing, and hold on to it, and therefore, he will ensure that it doesn't fall out, doesn't slip out. Continues the Gemara, Rebbe Kiva Shita is, he should place the tefillin in the crevices that are facing the Beis HaKisei. Now the Mepharshim explain, this is speaking about when he doesn't have the option of wrapping it in his clothing for whatever reason. His clothing are tight, and he doesn't allow any wrapping. Therefore, in this case, the second best option is to place it in the chayrin asmuchim Beis HaKisei, and the crevices and the cranny, and the nook and cranny, which is facing the inside, facing the Beis HaKisei. Don't leave it in the window facing the public domain. He disagrees with Beis Shammai. Don't put it there. Why? Because perhaps the wayfarers will steal it, and there is an associated risk. This can lead to a suspicion being aroused. Somebody might suspect this individual of immorality, as we will see in the following story. There was a story of a student. He indeed deposited his tefillin in the window, in the crevices which were facing the public domain. And what happened? An immoral woman took it. This immoral woman took it and she brought it to the Beis HaMedrash. And she announced, V'amra, look what this individual, the owner of the tefillin, gave me as a reward for the Avera. The student heard this declaration, this announcement. He was so ashamed and embarrassed. He went up to the roof and he fell and he died. Chacham established as a result, one should not place his tefillin in this manner, facing the public domain, but rather should wrap it in his clothing and hold on to it in this way, so that he avoids this possible risk. So in conclusion, we have three shittos. We have Beis Shammai, who hold that one is meant to remove his tefillin completely prior to his entry into Beis HaKisei. Where does he place his tefillin? He places it in the windows facing the Rishus HaRabim. Rashi explains there is a benefit in doing it there and not putting it into the chayrim that are facing the Beis HaKisei, since there are rodents, there are rats, etc. there in a private area, in a place where there are no people roaming, and therefore the rats perhaps will desecrate the tefillin, they will cart it away, and therefore, as a result of this concern, we prefer that he leaves it facing the Rishus HaRabim, which is a public area, since there are people walking back and forth. The rodents are not commonly found there, so that avoids that concern. According to Beis Hillel, one is meant to hold it in his hands, hold it tight in your hands. Don't wrap it in your clothing, because holding it directly will ensure that it doesn't slip away. According to Rabbi Akiva, one is meant to wrap it in his garment and hold on to it that way. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Brayso. Now the Gemara here will come to elaborate on the sequence of events, the chain of events that led up to the Takana Beis Hillel, that one is meant to hold it directly in his hand. This is what happened. Initially, they would place their tefillin they would place it in the crevices facing the Beis HaKisei, since they wanted to avoid the wayfarer stealing it. But the achbar and the mice would come and take it away. Therefore they were masakin. They would place it in the window facing the public domain, with the achbar and the mice were not found there. However, subsequently, something else happened. The wayfarers, the travelers, would come and steal it. And as we mentioned earlier, that carries a tremendous risk of a person being suspected with immorality. Therefore, finally, they established Yiskinu, one should rather hold it, grip it with his hands directly, and then bring it into the Beis HaKisei. And this is an elaboration of the chain of events that led to the establishment of the takana, of the shita, of the opinion of Beis Hillel, that one is meant to grab it with his hands and take it into the Beis HaKisei in that manner. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yoshia Brei Rav Shimon Levi. Halacha. This is again interpreting the shita, explaining describing the shita of Beis Hillel, where one is meant to grab his tefillin directly, biyadav with his hands, and hold it in the Beis HaKisei in that manner. The halacha is a goylelam k'min sefer. One is meant to roll up the ritzuis like a scroll. V'yichlam b'yaminoi k'neged liba, hold it with his right hand, k'neged liba, opposite his heart, in a respectful fashion. Amar Rav Yosef Amar Yumi Amar Rav Nachman Bilvad, he must make sure that even a small part of the ritzuah, of the strap, an amount of a tefach, should not protrude outside of his hand. It should not be exposed, since Rashi explains the ritzuah has kedusha on account of the fact that we bind ourselves to the tefillin with the ritzuahs, on account that the ritzuahs contain part of the letters of Hashem's name, the Dalid in the ritzuah shel Rosh, the Yud in the ritzuah shel Yad. Therefore, one is not meant to expose a large amount of this ritzuah in the Beis HaKisei. Make sure it's covered. Amar Rav Yaakov Bar Acham Rav Zera Leishanu. This leniency was only said. The leniency that allows him to bring the tefillin into the Beis HaKisei, hold on to it there, is only is only if there's enough time for him to put the tefillin back again. Meaning the Chachamim made a leniency that he's allowed to hold it in this manner if he is meant to put his tefillin back on. There's enough time available in the day to put his tefillin back on. Therefore, the Chachamim did not obligate him to go and find a kli and place it in a kli. They allow him to hold on to it so that he can immediately put it back on again. Aval ein shos b'yom loshen. There's not enough time available for him to put it back on. Oislam kiminkis tefach umanichan. In that case, he may not hold on to it in the Beis HaKisei, but rather he should locate a kiminkis tefach, sort of a pouch the size of a tefach, and place it in the kiss, in the pouch, and then he can have it in the Beis HaKisei. Says the Gemara, it depends if it's by day or at night. By day, he can wrap it like a scroll, and hold it in his hand, against his heart. So this is very similar to Rabba Babrachana, that at night, since he can't put on his tefillin anyways, so he's meant to find a pouch and put it into the pouch. Says the Gemara, this that you require the kiss to be the size of a tefach is only leishanu, is only elah b'kli kelyan. Is only if this receptacle, this kli, is designated, is kelyan, is designated to be used as a pouch for the tefillin. In that case, Rashi explains it is batal to the tefillin. It is subordinate to the tefillin. It is like a wrapper of the tefillin. Therefore, it doesn't create its own domain. It is not considered to be a separate entity. It is subordinate. It is like a wrapper to the kli, to the tefillin. Therefore, it needs to be of significant size to be considered its own domain, its own area. It needs to be a tefach. Ava b'kli she'enei kelyan, but if it's a receptacle, a kli, a vessel that is not kelyan, is not designated to be used for the tefillin, in that case, afilu pachas im tefach, even if it's smaller than a tefach, it doesn't have a halal, a hollow area of a tefach inside the kli, is very small. Nevertheless, since it is not kelyan, is not designated to be used for the tefillin, so it has a significance. It is considered to be its own entity, and therefore you may place the tefillin in there. And as Rashi explains, you may even place it on the karka, on the floor, and that's okay since he's putting it into a kli. So Rashi explains that the discussion of a kiss tefach, the obligation to require a kiss tefach, or in the case of something which is not designated for a tefillin, it could be even smaller than a tefach, is regarding the leniency of allowing him to put it on the floor, on the karka. He can't put it on the karka unless he puts it into a kli tefach, or in the case of kli she'enei kelyan, it could be even less than a tefach. Other Mepharshim explain that this is regarding the leniency of allowing the tefillin to be brought into Beis HaKisei. He can do so only if he puts it into a kli tefach. And if it's a kli she'enei kelyan, if it's not designated for the tefillin, it could be even smaller than a tefach. But they explain that we know that one may not bring a tefillin into Beis HaKisei unless it is kiss v'sech kiss, it is put into a pouch within a pouch. So in the case where he's putting it into a kli tefach, a kli which has a hollow area the size of a tefach, he may place it in that kli even if it's merely just one kli. That already makes its own entity. It's considered to be a separate area. It's not considered to be within the Beis HaKisei. However, if it's a smaller than a tefach, if it's a kli she'enei kelyan, a kli that's not designated as a pouch for the tefillin, where Abaye taught us it could be even a small kli, in that case it needs to be kiss v'sech kiss. It needs to put it into one kiss within another kiss, even if they're very small. But it needs to be a double wrapping. That is what the Mepharshim point out here. Continues the Gemara. Omar Mar Zutra v'teimer Rav Ashi. Mar Zutra said, some say it was Rav Ashi, Teida, I'll prove to you, I'll show to you, that a kli that is very small can sometimes protect, and can be considered like its own entity. Small earthenware vessels that are within the oil mace, within the roof of a dead person, they're under the same roof as a mace. They protect anything that is placed inside them if they're properly sealed, even if they're very small. So we see that a kli need not be large in size. A kli could be even a small kli and can be considered to be like a separate entity, like a separate domain. Here too, regarding tefillin, it can be even a small kli. Nevertheless, it's considered to be a separate domain, and one may place its tefillin inside them. So, in summary, regarding a kli, regarding bringing the tefillin into the Beis HaKisei, Rav Yashi says that he wraps it like a scroll and holds it in his right hand opposite his heart. Rabbi Yosef taught us that you've got to make sure, you have to ensure that the ritzua is not protruding a tefach. Rav Zeir taught us this heter, this leniency is only if there's enough time to put his tefillin back on again. Rav Zeir said, this is only, Rabbi Chana taught us, this is only if it is by day and not at night. Abaye says, a tefach is not required if this kli is not a kli which is designated for the tefillin. Continues the Gemara of Amar Rabba, Babar Chana, Ki avazlinan ba'asrei Rav Yechanan, when we would follow Rav Yechanan. Ki avaboy l'meil beis hakisei, when he wished to enter beis hakisei. Ki avanoket sifra da'agada, when he was holding onto a sefer agada, havayavlan, he would deposit it with us and did not bring it into the beis hakisei with him. Ki avanoket tefillin, but however, when he was holding onto tefillin, havayavlan, he wouldn't give it to us. Omar, he said as follows: Hoil v'sharun Rabbanan, being that the Rabbanan allowed one to enter the Beis HaKisei with tefillin ninatron, I want to hold on to them. I want them to guard me, to protect me from the evil forces from the mazikim that are prevalent in the Beis HaKisei. Omar Rav, a similar incident. Ki avazlina b'aseder of Nachman, when we followed Rav Nachman when he wished to enter the Beis HaKisei. Ki avanoket sifra da'agata, when he was holding on to a sefer yoivlan, he would give it to us. However, ki avanoket tefillin, when he was holding on to tefillin lo yoivlan, he wouldn't give it to us. Omar, he said, since the Rabbanan allowed one to enter Beis HaKisei with a tefillin, ninatron, let me hold on to them so that they protect me. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa. One should not daven while holding on to tefillin or sefer Torah, since this impedes his concentration, it diverts his kavanah, since he's concerned lest they may fall down. Continues the Brisa, one should not urinate, should be mashtem meraglayim while holding on to these items. And should not sleep while holding on to them. Not a fixed sleep. And not even a temporary doze. Amar Shmuel, we know that he cannot daven together with the holding on to the tefillin and sefer Torah. There are four additional items that are restricted as well. A sakin, a knife, a mois, uka'ara v'kikar. One may not daven while clutching these items, since this too impedes his kavanah, his concentration. He's concerned that the sakin might not fall down, the knife may fall down and harm him. The mois, the coins will fall down, disperse. The kara, the plate of food will spill out, and the kikar, the loaf of bread, will drop to the floor and be soiled. Amar Rava, Amar Rav Sheshes. Less hilchos masnisa. We do not follow, the halacha does not follow this brisa which prohibits, which doesn't allow one to be mashtim meraglayim together with his tefillin in his hands. Why? Because this Mishnah, Beishamai, is following the stringent view of Beishamai. The Beis Hillel, because if it were following the Shita of Beis Hillel, that cannot be so. Hashto Beis HaKisei Kavua Shari. We find that Beis Hillel allow one to enter Beis HaKisei Kavua, an established Beis HaKisei, which contains soya. He's allowed to enter there with his tefillin. Beis HaKisei Arami Boy. Do you need to tell me that one is allowed to do so in a Beis HaKisei Arai, which doesn't contain soya? One is merely going and being mashtim meraglayim in a place which is not an established Beis HaKisei. Certainly one can enter there with his tefillin. So the brisa that prohibits one from being mashtim together with his tefillin in his hands, apparently this is the stringent view of Beis Shammai, and we do not follow this shita. Now the Gemara will conclude later, there is actually a reason why a Beis HaKisei Arai is in this case more stringent. Meaning, there's a chashash of nitzotzes, there's a chashash of droplets of meraglayim landing on one's legs when one is being mashtin, standing upright in a Beis HaKisei Arai, and therefore one may not hold on to his tefillin then, since it is not covered for the tefillin to wipe oneself from meraglayim while he's holding on to the tefillin. This concern does not apply to Beis HaKisei Kavua. Even though it is more significant of a Beis HaKisei, nevertheless, it doesn't carry this concern, it doesn't contain this chashash of nitzotzes, since a person relieves himself over there in a sitting position, and there's no chashash nitzotzes. That will be what the Gemara will conclude later. However, at this point, Rabbah challenges this halacha. How can you say that a Beis HaKisei Kavua is more lenient? One can enter a Beis HaKisei Kavua and not do so regarding Beis HaKisei Arai. Apparently, this is the stringent view of Beis Shammai and not Beis Hillel. Says the Gemara Meisvei, I will challenge you with a brisa. There are things that I allowed you in one place. Nevertheless, I prohibited you in a different place. My love tefillin. Apparently, this brisa is concerning the allowance of bringing tefillin to Beis HaKisei, and the brisa is stating as follows: although Beis Hillel allow entering a Beis HaKisei Kavua with tefillin, nevertheless he may not do so regarding a Beis HaKisei Arai. Says more inside. Either Amas Bishleim Beis Hillel, It's all well if this brisa is referring to Shitas Beis Hillel, that hitarti l'cha kavua, I allowed you to bring the tefillin to Beis HaKisei kavua. Nevertheless, asarti l'cha kan Beis HaKisei arai. Although I allowed you to do it in a Beis HaKisei kavua, but not in a Beis HaKisei arai. So apparently, this brisa holds that even Beis Hillel prohibits one from entering a Beis HaKisei arai with tefillin, not like the suggestion, the shita of Rava. Ela yamas Beis Shammai. However, if this brisa is following the shita of Beis Shammai, and only Beis Shammai restrict and prohibit one from bringing tefillin into a Beis HaKisei arai, it won't work. We have no way of being a farish, of interpreting this brisa. Beis Shammai never allow anybody to bring tefillin anywhere, even to Beis HaKisei kavua. So what does the brisa mean? That although I allowed you in one place, I disallow it elsewhere. There's no such a thing according to Beis Shammai. So apparently the brisa is not following Beis Shammai, rather Beis Hillel. Apparently Beis Hillel prohibit tefillin into a Beis HaKisei arai. Says Gemara, no, the brisa is concerning a different halacha altogether. It is discussing a different topic altogether. The brisa is discussing the obligation of one to remain tzonua and modest in all circumstances, and one is allowed to reveal himself as much as required, as necessary during relieving oneself. A shear of a tefach, a shear of 2 tefachim, as the Gemara will explain. The Tani Chada, we have a brisa which states as follows: Shunifna, one who relieves himself, megala la'achar tefach, he reveals from behind him a shear of a tefach, or lefanav tefachim, in front of him he may reveal 2 tefachim. We have another brisa which seems to contradict. V'tani, we have another brisa which says la'achar tefach, behind him he can reveal 1 tefach, lefanav v'lei in front of him nothing. How do we reconcile this contradiction, this theory? My love, perhaps, either both brisa are concerning a man, a male, who's relieving himself. V'lei kasha, it is not a kasha, it is not difficult. Kan l'gdolim, kan l'ktanim. The brisa which says that he reveals me'achrav tefach is speaking about one relieving himself from gdolim. Therefore, he only needs a tefach me'achrav. L'fanav, he doesn't need anything. Kan l'ktanim, the brisa which says that he reveals 2 tefachim in front of him is concerning a person, a male who is relieving himself, who is being mashtem meraglayim, and he requires 2 tefachim in front of him. So that is the interpretation of both these brises. We reconcile, we are metaris stira. And similarly, regarding our first brisa, which says there is something which I allowed you in one place and not elsewhere, it's referring to ktanim and gdolim. Regarding one who is being mashtem meraglayim, he's allowed to. He has a heter, hitarti l'cha. He's allowed to reveal lefanav tefachim, but asarti l'cha kan. Nevertheless, regarding one who is relieving himself from gdolim, in this case, he can't reveal anything in front of him. So this is the interpretation, the meaning of the brisa. I allowed you in one place, but disallowed elsewhere. Says Umar, how could you interpret, how could you reconcile this theory, the contradiction between these 2 brises of Tani Chad and Tani Idach in this manner? Ibik Tanim, if the brisa which allows 2 tefachim in front of him is concerning one who is being mashtin Tanim, meraglayim, if so, la'achrav tefach lomeli. The brisa says he can have 2 in front and 1 behind. Why does he need anything behind? Elo, you must say that is not the right teretz. David v'gdolim, both brises are concerning one who is relieving himself from gdolim. V'lei is not difficult. Habi-isha. One brisa is a man, therefore he requires 1 tefach me'achrav and 2 tefachim in front of him, as Rashi explains. While one is engaged in the process of relieving himself, even from gdolim, that leads him to an urge of ktanim as well, and therefore he needs to leave 2 tefachim in front of him for the ktanim. The brisa that says that one is allowed to merely have a tefach me'achrav but nothing in front is be'isha, who doesn't have this concern. Okay, so this is the proper teretz interpretation of both these brises. One brisa is a man, one is a woman. And indeed, going back to our original brisa, Devorim sheitartil chakan, there are things that I allowed in one case, that is an ish who requires 2 tefachim in front of him on account of his meraglayim. Asarti l'chakan, I disallowed you elsewhere, which is an isha, because she doesn't have that concern. She's not allowed to have any revelation in front of her. Okay, says the Gemara, if that is the proper interpretation of the brisa, how are you going to explain the conclusion of the brisa? Zeu kavachomer she'en alav tshuva. If you will challenge me with a kavachomer, I will have nothing to respond to you. Meaning, if you challenge this halacha by using the rationale of the Kavachimer, I can't respond to you. I have nothing to answer. What do you mean? My enel of tshuva. What do you mean? I have nothing to respond. Darka de Musa achiyisa. We're speaking about just plain metzias, plain factual things. This is what's required for an isha. This is what's required for an ish. There's no kal, there's no chayma, there's no stringencies, no leniencies here. How can you challenge this halacha? Ella last tefillin. Okay, so now we concluded that it must be that indeed the Bryce is not concerning the halachas of revealing oneself during the process of relieving oneself, but rather it's referring to the allowance of bringing tefillin to Beis HaKisei. And the Bryce indeed is discussing that halacha. And therefore the Bryce says, there are dvarim shir tatel hakam. There are things that I allowed you in a Beis HaKisei kavua, but didn't allow you in a Beis HaKisei arai. And on this the Bryce concludes, although perhaps you can challenge this by using a kavachimer and saying, how can you be more stringent in a Beis HaKisei arai more than a Beis HaKisei kavua? Is a Beis HaKisei arai of a higher level than and more stringent, more superior than a Beis HaKisei kavua? How can that be? Indeed, this is something which is inviting a challenge. The Gemara will discuss it in a minute. But in any case, apparently this Bryce is discussing tefillin, and this is a tiyufta de Rava, this is a refutation on Rava. From this Bryce we see clearly that according to Shittas Beis Hillel, although they allow one to enter a Beis HaKisei kavod with tefillin, but not so regarding a Beis HaKisei arai. V'tiyufta de Rava. Amar Rav Sheshes. V'tiyufta de Rava Rav Sheshes tiyufta. This is a refutation to Shittas Rava. Says the Gemara, Mekom kasha. Okay, but let's go back to the Brisa. It is very difficult. How can you say Hashta Beis HaKisei kavod shari? If you see that they allow one to enter tefillin in the Beis HaKisei kavod, Beis HaKisei arai lo kolshkein. Certainly in a Beis HaKisei arai that should be allowed. How can you be more stringent, more machmer in a Beis HaKisei arai? Says the Gemara, the reason is Hachei Kamar. This is the reason. Yes, indeed, there is a special reason for a Beis HaKisei arai that this reason does not apply in a Beis HaKisei kavua. Says the Gemara, Hachei Kamar. Beis HaKisei kavua is lekan etzoyis shari. Only Beis HaKisei kavua, since the relieving process is taking place sitting down. Therefore, there is no chashash of nitzoises, of droplets landing on his legs. He does not need to wipe them off his feet, and therefore he may hold on to the tefillin while he's relieving himself. However, Beis HaKisei arai, dikin nitzoises, in a Beis HaKisei arai, since he is relieving himself from erglayim, standing up, and there is the prevalence of nitzoises, the droplets of water landing on his legs, and he needs to wipe them. Therefore, Asri, he is prohibited from holding on to his tefillin, because it is not covered for the tefillin while wiping his legs in this manner. Says more, if so, Yachi, Amayel of Tshuva. Why does the Bryce conclude that there's nothing to respond? If you would challenge me with a Kavachayim and say, how could you hold the Beis HaKisei arai in higher regard than a Beis HaKisei kavua? I have nothing to respond to. What do you mean I have nothing to respond? Tshuva Ma'al Yasi. You've just responded very, very forcefully. It is a good tshuva. It is a good distinction. Says the Gemara, what we meant to say is as follows. Hachikamar. Ha milsa, this distinction, this prohibition of a Beis HaKisei arai that doesn't apply to a Beis HaKisei kavua, teisil b'teres taima, you must present it with a mere reason. You can't use the whole process of stringencies and leniencies. It is a pashat, it is a simple explanation, it is very straightforward. This concern applies here or not there. Because if you will apply the concept of stringencies and leniencies, the asil b'teres kavachimer, indeed, del kavachimer shel shuva, I would come and challenge you and say, what do you mean? Stringencies and leniencies, if you're following that type of formula, you can't be machmer, you can't apply a stringency to a Beis HaKisei arai more than a Beis HaKisei kavua. If we're following the formula of stringencies and leniencies, it wouldn't hold water. You would challenge me in a way that I couldn't even respond. So apparently, the distinction is merely factually based. It is based on a mere time and straightforward reason that the concern of netzoitzes apply by Beis HaKisei arai and not by Beis HaKisei kavua. So in summary, if one is wearing tefillin, he may not relieve himself from gdolim. What about ketanim? That depends. In the Beis HaKisei kavod, that too is not allowed, since it can lead to gedolim. In Beis HaKisei arai, that is allowed if he's wearing them. But if he's merely holding on to them in his hands, that is not allowed, since miraglayim in a Beis HaKisei arai take place, ba'amida, standing up, that involves the droplets that get sprayed on his feet, and is not covered for the tefillin to wipe his feet, holding on to the tefillin. So regarding a Beis HaKisei today, nowadays, there's discussion amongst the poskim if it has the same status as the Beis HaKisei in the Gemara, since the waist doesn't remain in its place. So that's a discussion amongst the poskim. Continues the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa. One who wishes to enter a lengthy meal, an established meal, and he wants to avoid the need to relieve himself in the middle. So what kind of good advice can we give him? He takes 10 short walks of 4 amas each, or 4 times 10 amas. This will facilitate the need to relieve oneself. He relieves himself, and he can enter his Suda without any worries. One who enters a fixed meal, he must remove his tefillin, and then only enter the Suda, since we're concerned that he'll get intoxicated during his meal and is not covered, is not respectful for the tefillin that he'll be wearing, so he needs to remove it prior to his entrance. This is in dispute of the opinion of Rav Chia. You can enter the Suda and then remove it and put it on the table. This is befitting for him, this is more appropriate since it's readily available for him to put it back on as soon as he's finished eating. Until what point must he sit there without his tefillin? Until it's time to recite the Baruch Achroin, and then he can put back on his tefillin. We learned the Brisa as follows. One may wrap his tefillin together with his money with the same kerchief. He wraps his tefillin in one corner of the kerchief and his money in the other corner. We learned the Brisa, which tells us not so. He may not wrap his tefillin with his money in the same kerchief. Says the Gemara, like Kasha, this is not difficult. It's speaking about 2 different types of circumstances. One is speaking about that he designated it for the purpose of his tefillin, so it assumes the status of an accessory, of a tashmish dikdusha, and therefore cannot be used for mundane purposes. The Brisa which allows is speaking about he did not designate it, and therefore he can use it for money as well. The Amar of Chizda, as Rav Chizda taught us, this pouch that he's wrapping his tefillin with, the azmanei lemeitzav tefillin that he designated to wrap his tefillin with, Sarbei tefillin, if he indeed followed through and he used it, he actually used it to wrap with it his tefillin, also lemeitzav pshiti. He cannot use it going forward to wrap with it his money, since he designated and he actually used it for tefillin. However, if any one of these conditions are not met, azmanei v'lei tzarbe, he designated but didn't actually use it for his tefillin, or in the reverse, tzarbe, he wrapped it, v'lei azmanei, he didn't designate it for his tefillin, then shari l'meitzav bezuzi, he can use it for money. So he requires 2 conditions. Number 1, designation. Number 2, actually having used it for his tefillin. Abaye holds that the determinant factor is always merely the designation, according to his shita. Then azmanei afgad l'ei tzarbe, even if he merely designated for tefillin, but never actually carried out his intention, he didn't use it to wrap his tefillin with, then it already has the status of a tashmish kedusha. However, tzarbe, if he wrapped it, then it depends. If he had designated for the tefillin, then the designation gives it the status of a tashmish kedusha. But if he merely wrapped it without designation, it is not considered to be an accessory of kedusha. So we have machlekes here. According to Rav Chizda, the determinant factor is 2 things, 2 conditions. He needs to designate it as well as use it for the tefillin. According to Abaye, there is a singular determinant which is the designation. Continues the Gemara. Can a person place his tefillin under his headrest? Certainly he can't put it under his feet, under his footrest. It's not respectful for the tefillin to place it in that place, that position. The question is merely, could he put it under his headrest? What is halacha? Amar lei. So he said to him, yes, mutter, he can place it there, even though his wife is present and he will engage in tashmish, nevertheless that is allowed. Meisei, we have a Brisa that teaches otherwise. He may not put it under his footrest because it's disrespectful for the tefillin. He can place it under his headrest. However, if his wife was present, it is prohibited. Continues the Brisa. However, if he had a ledge which was 3 tefachim higher than the level of the bed, or lower 3 tefachim, that is considered to be a separate area, and it is allowed even if Ishtai is imay. Tiyufta, the Shmol Tiyufta. This Brisa, which doesn't allow one to put the tefillin under his headdress when his wife is present, is a refutation to Shmuel, who holds that one is allowed. Amar Rava, Avgav the Tani Tiyufta the Shmuel, even though we have a brisa which refutes Shmuel, nevertheless, Hilchas Kava say that halacha follows his opinion. It is better to put it under his headrest, even with his wife. My time and why? Kol linturinut feyadav. Since by placing it in that area, it is better. He safeguards it better. He watches it better. He takes care of it. He makes sure that the achbarim, the mice, the thieves will not carry it away. Therefore, the consideration of safeguarding the tefillin is of higher priority, is a higher consideration to the concern of the respect for the tefillin. Therefore, it is better to put it under his headrest, even with his wife present, rather than putting it elsewhere, and risk it being carried away by the thieves or the mice. So in conclusion, one may not put the tefillin tachas margalosav under his feet, but regarding tachas marashosav, that depends. According to the brisa, he's allowed to put a tachas marashosav provided that his wife is not there. Even when his wife is there, he can put it in a place which is gavay gimel tfachim or namech gimel tfachim. According to Shmuel, he may place a tachas marashosav even when his wife is there, since the consideration of safekeeping, of safeguarding the tefillin is a superior consideration to the consideration of the respect.